How's everybody doing? I'm exhausted. Can we just nap right now? No. Stephen was wonderful. You were just amazing. And this is a perfect segue from some of the insights you shared in your presentation. So hopefully we'll be able to drill down a little bit more into this concept of owning your personal brand, defining it, and really taking control of your career journey. We'll start with a little bit about me, because it's always got to be about you, right? I'm a transformation junkie. That's my identity. I love to do things in unconventional ways. And one of the things that is a core part of who I am and what I believe is that you always have to strive for the art of the possible. Think about all those times in your life, in your career, where you think of the word can't. How many times does that come up during a day? A lot? Think about what happens if you change that can't into how can I? Changing the impossible into the possible. That's what I stand for, and that's who I am. Had an interesting career. I am not a designer. I am an accountant by trade. Are you excited about that? Actually, when I went home and told my parents I was going to major in accounting, my mother said, "You're bad at math." And I said, "I know." And then I said, "But my teacher said I'm good at accounting, and accounting is not math." So on my graduation day, my mother came to my graduation, and she looked at me and she goes, "Are you really getting your degree today? Do they know that you're really bad at math?" Fast forward, I'm still really bad at math. But I've spent a lot of my career in accounting, auditing, compliance, all these things that are just incredibly riveting and fun. But I, like Stephen, have been a unicorn in that space. Status quo is overrated. And I've spent my entire career trying to think about how do I actually push the status quo and change it? How do I challenge it every day? So this is a little bit about who I am. You can't talk about who you are without some fun facts. There was nothing more fun than delivering Avon products by boat in the Amazon. People actually traded chickens for deodorant. I wasn't sure why they wanted deodorant, because it just was not the kind of the thing there. But they traded chickens for deodorant, and it was a lot of fun. Grammy Awards versus the Victoria's Secret fashion show, I don't know which is better. A lot of fun in both of those. And then I spent some time in music companies. Warner and EMI are both music companies I spent some time in. And I actually entered a songwriting contest with a colleague. And we won second place. It was kind of cool. One day there was an employee songwriting contest. One of the things that I've always loved is music. And I used to write music when I was younger, in my younger days, and I thought I was going to be in a rock band. Anybody think they were going to be in a rock band? Come on, who plays air guitar? I do air drums. Oh, good, we can have a band. We're good. But the funniest thing that I've done was I was working as the head of internal audit for, the company was called Limited Brands at the time. Now it's called L Brands. So Victoria's Secret, Bath & Body Works, we had Express, Limited, Abercrombie. We had all these great brands. We were in Columbus, Ohio, okay? Nobody knew where Columbus, Ohio is. Matter of fact, when I was moving from New York to Columbus, Ohio, people thought it was out by California. They're like, "Where is that?" It turns out it was a really quick drive. It wasn't that long. And I'm out in Columbus, Ohio, trying to hire people for my internal audit team. Now that's an exciting proposition. Come to Columbus, Ohio, and be an internal auditor. So we weren't having a lot of luck. So I gave my team a digital camcorder, because this is before YouTube, this is before we all had our smartphones. And I said, for the next 2 weeks, go out and film everything you absolutely love about this company. And I came back with video footage at the company store, taking the corporate jet. I had all this great video footage. And I said to the team, I said, "What is the one thing that you wish you had that was missing?" And they said, "A supermodel pitching our team." And I'm like, "A supermodel, really?" So now I had that. I can't do that. And I turned it into how can I? And this was the outcome.
Hi, I'm Alessandra Ambrosio, and I love the internal audit team.
Yeah, come on. 8 takes, but Alessandra Ambrosio loved the internal audit team. Just shows you a little bit about who I am. But we're not going to talk about that today. What we're going to talk about is I'm going to take you a little on a journey of some of my career life lessons. And I think what it's kind of boiled down to for me is this intersection of confidence and competence. I find that, like as I was going through my career, and I've spent time in junior roles trying to make my way up to the C-suite. I've spent a lot of time navigating the C-suite, which has always been fun and a challenge, and you'll get to hear a little bit about that in a bit. But the thing that I realized is that whether it was my career or folks that I was mentoring, people that I was spending time with, everybody has this interesting, delicate balance that they try to strike between confidence and competence. Even people that are incredibly successful are self-doubters. And it's just how they manage that self-doubt that makes them awesome at what they do. So we'll talk a little bit about that today. I've had great champions, mentors, and sponsors through my career. Early on, I thought the best way to be successful was put my head down and just do great work and hope that people took notice. People don't take notice. And what happens is you'll end up lucky at some points in your career, and there will be people that will shepherd you along because they believe in you, sometimes more than you believe in yourself. But what ends up happening is that if you're not your biggest fan, that goodwill only kind of, you hit a ceiling in it. And I learned that early on, and what ended up happening is I became my biggest fan. And that was the most awesome, empowering thing that I was able to do for myself. And that's one of the things that I'm going to ask you guys to think about in terms of doing for yourself. What I'd like you to do today is I'm going to take you through a couple of different things, but realize that doing great work is not enough. What you have to do is actually be awesome, and you have to master this balance of the confidence and competence. So it's really having mastery of the competence, be great at what you do. That's non-negotiable. That's the price of admission. But the other part is owning the confidence, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. The four things that are going to frame this up, I'm going to tell you some stories about each of these. It's about building your own personal brand and owning it, navigating your career journey, taking control of your narrative, and not going it alone. And they really apply to you no matter where you are in your career life stage. And I have used these throughout my career in order to continue to evolve into who I am right now and who I've become through that journey. So we're going to talk about that. So my challenge to you is I'd like you to take away one or two new ideas from the stuff that I'm going to take you through today, and either start taking control of your career journey and taking control of navigating your personal brand, or add it to the toolkit that you have already. So we're going to start with the first lesson. It is all about the shoes. I do have to say Stephen has better shoes on than I do today, and I did not expect that. Do you guys see his shoes?
They're fabulous.
They're fabulous. They're like Birkins on his feet. Mine are not those. So this is a funny story. I was working at EMI, which is a music company. It was like Virgin Records. We had the Rolling Stones and David Bowie and all these great artists. And I got hired to be in the corporate audit department, again, very riveting, and I was sitting in one of the corporate offices, and the office was this like dichotomy of what the business really was. Everybody was in suits. It was pretty cool. We got to sit at our desks every day, and they brought lunch on China because they wanted to hold you captive all day. It was really wonderful. It was actually a lot of fun, and we got to blast music, and it was very cool. But I was in a suit. A couple of days into my tenure of this new journey, my boss calls me in and says, we have a problem with a team that's out in California at Virgin Records. They're having a really bad clash with management. We need you to go out and solve it. And I'm like, cool, this is going to be cool. He's like, you're flying out first thing in the morning, and you're going to meet the team at the hotel. You can go shower. You'll meet the team in the morning, and you'll go. So I fly out to California, and I run to the hotel, and I take my shower, and I put on my nicely pressed suit. And I go downstairs to meet the team. We're going to go over to Virgin Records. And they looked at me, and they were horrified. They're like, you can't go like that. And I'm like, what do you mean? They're all wearing like these casual clothes. They look like all of us in this room. Some of them, actually, one guy was in surfer shorts with Huarache sandals. That was actually pretty cool. And I was horrified by what they were wearing. And they're like, you can't go like that. And I said, yes, I can. I'm from corporate. They're not going to take me seriously if I don't go like that. Spent a lot of my time trying to fit in and figure out how do I present myself in a way that's authoritative and that people actually take me seriously as, as this auditor and as this leader. So we argue, and they said, what did you fly in? And I said, black t-shirts, black jeans, and a pair of Doc Martens. And they said, go upstairs and change. And I was like, no. I went upstairs and changed, and I was so grateful when we pulled up. They would not have let me into the building, and nobody would have talked to me. They would have sized me up and said, oop, not going to talk to her, and kind of pushed me aside. Fast forward. Years later, I go through my corporate life. So 5.5 years in the music industry, I wore the same uniform every day. There was a reason that Simon Cowell and others wear like the white t-shirt. He wears the same thing all the time. Because in the music industry, that's what you do. You have a uniform. And then once you have that uniform, you do it. So mine was the black t-shirt, black jeans, and my Doc Martens. I leave to go to limited brands, to L brands. And there I am thinking, I can't wear the same outfit, so I go back into my suits. Right? So my career keeps going. I end up leaving corporate and starting a consulting company years later. And I get a call from the guy who used to be the head of HR at EMI. This is like 10, 15 years later. And he said to me, I hear you're doing consulting. He was the COO of Blue Man Productions. So everybody know Blue Man Group? And he said, I have this project, and you're the only one I know that can do it. And I really would love if you would come, can I give you, a gig, a consulting gig? And I'm like, sure, what's the project? He said, it's a creative project. He said, we have performances that go on all over the world in different venues, on boats and all kinds of things like that. And there's this artistic direction setting process that we've been having a really hard time getting people to actually make changes and do things. And what it does is if people don't actually improve the quality of the show and listen to the people who are giving them the artistic direction and they don't make changes, it really degrades the quality of the show. I need you to help fix that. And I'm like, what the hell do I know? First of all, about Blue Men. I had never seen the production. I've now seen it more times than anybody ever has a right to, in more venues than you ever. And the thing that broke my heart wasn't that Santa Claus wasn't real. It was that it wasn't just 3 guys. I was like, wait, it's not the same guys running all over. It wasn't. It was sad. And you know what? It is really a struggle with the blue stuff. It sticks in your nose and your ears. But anyway, so he ends up saying to me, the reason that I want you to do this is you're the only person I know that can actually get people to agree to doing things that they don't want to do and they feel awesome about it. So, again, it's back to the whole idea of how do you involve people in a process to solve a problem, and then and they have ownership of it, and how do you actually make that happen? And I was like, wow, that's actually something that's kind of cool to be known for. And then as we're hanging up and we set up a meeting, he said, you are going to wear your Doc Martens, right? And I thought, I had put my Doc Martens away, and I didn't tell him this, but I had put them away 15 years before. I still had a pair in my closet. Matter of fact, it was those. That was my new pair maybe, but it was those. And I realized that if I was going to go see that I had a brand, a personal brand. My brand was about being able to get people to a place to do things that they didn't want to do, which is what I did a lot of my audit career. And the other was how I actually dressed was really important to how people engaged with me and how they perceived me. So I go to the meeting, and it was actually a wild success, and we had a really, really good time through it. And then a couple of years later, I end up deciding to go back into corporate because somebody from Warner Music calls me up, who I used to work with at EMI, and says, you need to come here and be the head of compliance and head of internal audit. And I said, I don't want to go back to corporate. And I went, and I kind of met with folks, and they were like, we really want you. You need to do this. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to go back into corporate. What did I do? I totally went back into my corporate uniform. I was in corporate. I was going to put on my corporate uniform, and I was going to be corporate. Went on to my career at Campbell's. And I was at Campbell's Soup, and I was the head of audit again. And I walk in my suits probably for the first 6 months. We had casual Fridays. And I was having such a hard time on casual Fridays trying to navigate, how do I really show up on a casual Friday? What's acceptable? Found myself a pair. I was wearing Converse all the time in my personal life. And I ended up finding myself a pair of Converse that had tomato soup can on it. And I put them on, and I went into work one day, and I was like the buzz and the talk of the office. People started talking to me because I was wearing these shoes. So then I got edgier and I started wearing Campbell's Soup t-shirts and all kinds of different things like that. And what I realized over time was that it was okay to do this. And then I just got rid of the suits and that became my uniform and that's how I went to work every day. And the thing that was interesting was that actually, as a leader, changed perception about who I was and how accessible I was. I would go into the cafeteria. I had people coming up to me, showing me their shoes all the time, and that would start a conversation about how things are going at work, what kind of thing, what do they need from me as a leader, how can I support them, and then how can they help me, in terms of what they were doing. So it was really important. So then what I did is I ended up going out to all the Converse outlets and buying up every pair that was that nobody else wanted. If it was totally wild and out there, I did it. And then, of course, you need a photo shoot for your shoes. I now have about 75, 80 pair of Converse, but anytime I speak, I always go back to my original ones that kind of sparked the trend. But my lesson that I learned from this is you have to be yourself. There's no one else that you can be. So focusing on building a brand for a company is, I was in the head frame that I totally related to the brands that I was working with and the brands that I was part of. What I didn't realize is that I had to have a personal brand and my personal identity. So what I did was I started doing some things to kind of help myself get to the right place. One of those things was about building a personal mission statement. Years ago, there was a book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I think it was Peter Drucker had written the book. And there was a thing about a personal mission statement. And I had done one many, many years ago. And I put it aside because I'm like, okay, I did the exercise and it's not that important. And years later, I had people kind of challenge me through my career in terms of what is my identity? Who am I? What do I stand for? Who do I want to be? And I took out my personal mission statement, and I realized all those years later, the mission statement I had written was exactly who I still wanted to be. And when I thought about it, it really defined kind of what my purpose was. What did I want to do? I wanted to do great work that mattered. I wanted to inspire people. I wanted to have fun while I was doing that work. What did I stand for? Doing the right thing. I stood for that. And then how did I want to be perceived by others? I wanted to delight and wow people. I was in service organizations that were not sexy at all, audit. But I wanted people to be delighted and wowed by the work that I was doing and that my team was doing so that they actually became part of the excitement and of the output of what we were doing. So one thing you can do, if you have a personal mission statement, dust it off. If you don't have one, put one together. There's plenty of ways that you can go about doing that. But think about, it really helps you think about who are you and what do you stand for. If you have one, the next thing to do is consciously show up as you. Think about what are those things that you identify as being your personal mission and your brand. And then do a little test. Reach out to 20, 25 people, 30 people, and ask them to give you 3 words that they would use to describe you. What would be interesting is also write down the 3 words that you would like people to describe you as, and then take a look at all those words that people are using to describe you, and think about how does that really marry up against how I want to be perceived and who I want to be. And then what are the things that I want to either change in my personal mission? What are the things that I need to change in terms of perception of my personal mission? But how does all of that kind of navigate together? Does anybody in here have a personal mission statement? A couple of people. And actually, one of them is Stephen. So seriously, and actually very few people in here do. It's a really, really great exercise, so definitely think about it. And what I like to do is use my mission as my North Star and making sure that everything I'm doing as a leader is aligned to how I want to be perceived. My next lesson is actually one that you brought up as well, which is bosses don't read minds. So I spent a lot of my career in finance or legal functions. So it was only natural that people thought I wanted to be a CFO. They didn't learn that I was bad at math. I wanted no part of being a CFO. So I'm at Campbell's Soup, and my CEO sits down with me and starts trying to talk to me about my career planning and journey, first thing was, I was like, I am in the back nine of my career and all I want to do is have a daiquiri on the beach, right? And I don't want to go through this career planning and career journey thing. She said, so, you know, I'm looking at succession planning and I was thinking about, you want to be the CFO, right? And I said, not a chance in hell, don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. And she couldn't understand. She's like, but you've been in finance your whole career. So she had me do something that at first I wasn't going to do. And it was a career journey map. This is kind of a picture of a snapshot of my career journey map. My career journey map actually started talking about what my experiences were, and I'll tell you a little bit about how to do one. But what I realized was at the end of this, she said to me, so what do you want, what role on my team do you want? So I did what I always did in my career. I said, that role doesn't exist. So I was keeping my options open. I didn't want to have to be declarative, and I didn't want her to tell me, no, you can't do that role, whatever that role is. Finally, she made me give her a role, and I told her what role it was. Within 2 months, I had that role. And it was, she looked at my career journey map, and she said, let's see what you're missing in terms of skills. What are you bringing into it? And then she decided, oh, there's nothing that you're missing. We can absolutely do this. And I ended up getting that promotion and ended up heading up our integrated global services for Campbell Soup. What I learned is there was a French author who once said, a goal without a plan is a wish. And the reality is if you're keeping your plans or your goals secret, they're only a wish. Nobody's going to know about it. You have to be bold and you have to get out there and you have to let people know where do you want to go. It's okay to be declarative. It's also okay to pick a destination that you're going to change, just like you did your major in college. How many of you never changed your major in college? Oh, you all wanted to be designers. All right, so you don't know the plight the rest of us have. The rest of us change our majors 100 different times. But the lesson from this was not expecting others to be the best steward of my journey. I had to be it. So one of the things that I do like to have folks do is this career journey map. And what it is you go through and you put in 3-year increments going back to your first job. If you're old like me, it's going to be really long, but do it. It's really good. It's a really good process to go through. And what you do is you highlight your companies, your roles, your key accomplishments. And this is not your resume in a horizontal format. This is really what are those things that were the outstanding kind of crucible moments in terms of your accomplishments. What skills did you get? They could be technical skills, they could be soft skills. But then who are the heroes and what were the key insights that you had at each piece of that career life stage? And what you do with that is then you pick a destination. And when you pick the destination, you look at your career journey map and say, all right, what skills am I bringing towards that destination? So if you want to be a finance person and you've been in design for a lot of your career, you may have actually gone and gotten your MBA in finance, and nobody might know that, and you might have some skills, or you might have been the treasurer of a not-for-profit. There might be things that you've done that actually are skills you can kind of take along the way. What you need to do is then figure out what are the gaps between where I am and where I want to be, and how do I fill those things? And sometimes you can do them through volunteer work, through leading projects at your company, doing things that are not necessarily part of your day-to-day. So not all experience needs to come from your role. And the next thing that you really need to focus on is building and working your network, especially when you don't need to. The worst time to change your LinkedIn profile and to go out there and actually figure out how do I connect with all these people is when you need a job. The best time is right now. And one of the challenges that I'll have for all of you is see if you can get 15 to 20 new LinkedIn connections out of this conference, and I'll volunteer to be one of them. So please reach out and kind of connect. But really staying connected to people, working those relationships, talking to people even when you don't need it is really important. Be active. And really understanding that the best investment of your time is in you. Next thing I learned is if you don't take control of your personal narrative, and if you're not the author, somebody else is going to do it for you. This used to be the narrative on paper that was me. I was the accountant, the auditor, the cop. When people thought about me, this is the song that they thought of. I didn't like that. I wanted this. the reality was that I needed to change perceptions with the people that I worked for, the people that I worked with, the people that I was serving, in terms of what was the whole picture of who I am. So that picture that you saw at the beginning, kind of like my little mini about me, is something that I used as my own personal brand marketing. So, put together kind of a marketing one-pager, and then use that and set up meetings with people that could potentially be champions or sponsors, or people that I was having challenges with who thought of me very myopically in one particular lane. And I used that as a starting point to really start having discussions about that I was a little bit broader than that. The other thing that I like to do, and that I've done a lot, is using the power of music to actually set the mood or give you confidence going into something. So those songs are things that play in my head all the time. Does anybody have a theme song? Anybody? Cool. So one of the things that I do is, like, if I'm going into a meeting with a really awful meeting, and I know that the people that I'm going to be meeting with are, kind of going to give me a hard time, this is I channel Tay-Tay. Perception is reality, and how people perceive you is really important, and you have to be in control of changing that perception and being aware of it. So again, remember, asking people for 3 words that describe you gives you a sense of the perception that they have of you, and making sure that you can carve that into the narrative that you want is really important. So marketing one-pager is a good idea if you want to kind of reintroduce yourself to folks. One of the things that I like to do is take those 20, 25 people and those 3 words and put it into a word cloud and see what word cloud kind of comes together that people use to describe you. Think about it. Are those the words that you really want to be the words that describe you? And if not, what do you need to do to change that? Theme songs, really, really important. It's funny. I actually did a talk like this a couple weeks ago, and this young woman was really inspired. She was talking about how she deserved a promotion. She hadn't gotten one in a long time. She knew she wasn't making enough money. And I said, well, go talk to your boss. Your boss can't read your mind. You need to do something. So she ends up reaching out to me last week, and she said, I'm going to talk to my boss, and I know you said something about theme songs. Can you tell me what my theme song should be? I'm going in 2 hours. And I was like, whoa, music is really personal. And I said, but here's 3 songs in case you can't think of one to get you into the right mindset. So she wrote me back later that afternoon and told me she used all 3 and got the promotion and got the raise. So it can be actually pretty powerful and cool. And then the other thing to really do is, once you have the sense of who your brand is, really show it to the world. Doing podcasts, blogs, getting out there and speaking and doing things is a great way to show the world your brand, and a great way to continue to build your network. So getting out there and speak. So what you want to do is maximize that positive exposure. The next is not going it alone. I know you guys have formed cohorts here. Keeping those cohorts alive out of this forum is a really, really cool way to kind of leverage what you've built here. You are your best when you're surrounded by the best people. If you're one of those people who hangs out and commiserates with people about all the things that are wrong in the company, or all the things that you can't do as a team, those things are going to limit you, and they're going to be bad. So make sure that you're really surrounded by the best people, and have those people as part of your posse. You need the posse. The other lesson I learned is that people do talk about you when you're not in the room. It's important to know what they're saying. And we think about champions, mentors, advocates, and sponsors as kind of a passive thing that just happens over time. Actively finding people to be your champions, sponsors, and mentors is a really important part of how you navigate this journey. And you need to make time to do it. You need to cultivate those relationships. My thinking on it is, find the people that are your superheroes, and then also, as you advance through your career, be one to others. I actively mentor probably still about like 40 to 50 people, some in groups. We call them, we have like a circle cohort that I actually mentor as a group, and then I do people one-on-one individually. And I find that it's as rewarding and important to do that as it is to be mentored and to have champions and advocates. So the takeaways are surround yourself with people that inspire you. If there are people that are toxic in your day-to-day, distance yourself from it, personally and professionally, because it'll always bring you down. Identify and seek out these sponsors, champions, and mentors, and not just when you have a question. Think about how you cultivate those relationships, how those relationships can be enriched by the connection of the relationship. And then finally, what I suggest is establishing a trust circle. Whether you start it with the cohort that you've established here, or I know Stephen was talking about the unicorn group, kind of folks that get together. Find people that you trust and that you want to spend time with, and actually start working on how do you inspire each other and how do you continue to mentor each other through this process. One of the things that you can do is start with 1 to 3, so write personal mission statements, challenge each other, go through them. I've done with some of my mentoring folks this idea of everybody bringing in their theme song, talking about why the theme song was, why they've chose that theme song and what that theme song means to them, and it's really, really interesting kind of how that works. The other thing you can do is pick a topic that you all really are interested in, and then find somebody who's an expert on the topic and invite them to coffee or lunch, and that way you can continue on the growth journey together. But not going it alone is really important, and I like to think of it as inspiring and being inspired. So just to kind of sum it up, I think these 4 things are really, really interesting things to think about in terms of where you're at in your career journey. Think about what is your personal brand, what do you stand for, what is your mission, how do people perceive you. Think about what's the theme song that people hear when you walk into the room. What are they, what are they thinking about? And then finally, this gets to this intersection of confidence and competence. It's important to be really good at what you do, but it's as important and sometimes more important to actually be confident in what you do and just have confidence overall. So that concludes this part, and I think we go into Q&A, don't we?
So it was interesting. When I was chatting with a lot of people yesterday, there was a lot of conversation about people who want to grow in their role and get to the next level, whatever that level is. What is the best way to position your personal brand for growth?
It's an interesting question. I think of positioning yourself for growth being different than your personal brand. Okay. So your personal,
let's dig into that.
Yeah, personal brand is at your core, at the essence of who you are. What is your purpose? What is it that you stand for? And that shouldn't necessarily diverge over the course of your life. You may learn some things about who you are, and you may want to add to it and kind of tweak it a little. But what your personal brand should be, it should be exactly how do you want to project yourself? What do you want people to see? What do you want people to hear when you walk into a room, when you're engaged in a conversation? When you're thinking about your career journey, you have to actually showcase not just your brand and who you are, but there's the competence piece. I think the brand piece is about the confidence, okay, in some way. And what you really need to do is actually also show people the competence piece.
Okay. So as an actionable takeaway, yep, for people who are looking to grow, it's this idea of owning your narrative, which you talked expertly about, but potentially understanding what that next step is, and crafting your narrative and showing how you can achieve that.
So the career map is a great way to get started with that. It actually gave me some insights when I did mine and had used it for the conversation with my CEO. It actually was kind of insightful in terms of how she interpreted it. So when you look across my career journey and you see music as being a lot of stops in my career, and you think about me being an auditor, an accountant, a chief compliance officer, different things like that, you don't think about creative. You think about a very, there's like the right brain, left brain thing. And when she went through and realized that I actually, the creative side of me was as important to me, and she said to me, now I get you, now I understand why you're a different auditor or why you're a different finance person. It's because you have a very different wiring in terms of your right brain, left brain. And what was interesting was it also helped me be a little bit more free in being able to express my creativity and my innovative side, instead of always feeling like I needed to be in the lane of being, the very, very serious finance, compliance, corporate thing. So
that's insightful. Thank you.
Yep.
What are, in your experience, what are some of the common mistakes in personal brand building?
Not being either truthful and in some cases realistic. So, what you don't want to do is project yourself as something that's different than you are authentically. If you try to create a brand around how you think people want you to be, how you want people to perceive you, that's not truly who you are, it doesn't work. I think about just me, for example. When I started in public accounting many years ago, there was a uniform I had to wear, and it involved pantyhose and pumps and skirt suits, and I don't wear skirt suits. I don't love skirts. I had a drawer full of plastic eggs that held legs pantyhose, and had become a master at that. But the thing that's interesting is that, I thought that was, I had to conform in order to build my brand in that particular, I felt like I had to conform to build my brand in that career journey. And the reality is all it did is it just made me not differentiated from anybody else that I was working with. I became just an automaton like everybody else. And if you try to conform, that's what happens.
Okay. Is there any allowance for understanding the system you're in if you want to grow?
Sure. You absolutely have to, but you also, you come to the intersection of the fork in the road where you make choices. And, sometimes the choice is can I go into this environment? Does this environment allow me to be at my best? Does this environment allow me to thrive? Does this environment allow me to grow? What I thrive in is going into environments that I don't necessarily fit into and create the platform for change and transformation. So it's how can I be that disruptive, innovative leader in a place that's kind of a little more old school and, and has a little bit more history. You think about the companies that I've worked for. Limited Brands had been, kind of on a journey that it was a business for many, many years, the same kind of business. I was brought in to actually do transformation and change in the lane that I was in. When I was at Warner Music, they brought me in because the industry had changed and they needed somebody who actually really understood the business and could help on that transformation journey. Campbell's Soup, it was how do we actually change, we're an old school company, how do we actually, be innovative, creative, and change? So.
Awesome. I love how outgoing you are, the dancing, the music, it's great. You definitely exude this really good personality. There was an interesting table conversation yesterday about embracing, being an introvert in the world of design, which I think, there's a lot more of us, and I'm part of that support group, so it's all right. But for people who are not comfortable with self-promotion, or maybe just need that start, what advice can you give them? What strategies can you tell people who may not be comfortable with that type of feeling? Like, how can they get started building their brand?
Can I tell you a secret?
Please.
I'm an introvert,
Wonderful.
Painful introvert.
Okay.
And I had a very, very hard time for a long time engaging with people because of it. It was something that exhausted me and something that I think I don't like people. I do now. For a long time, I didn't like people. But I'm a painful introvert. It took practice. I knew, and maybe this is, kind of goes to your previous question. I knew that in order to be successful, I had to engage with people. And hiding out in my office and just, kind of sitting behind a computer wasn't going to breed any kind of success at the level that I wanted it. So the thing that I would do is push yourself outside your comfort zone. So what you need to do is find places where you can practice being an extrovert. Public speaking is a great way to do it. If you're not comfortable doing it live in front of folks, sitting behind your computer and doing, a podcast or doing something that, writing a blog, doing something where you can actually put yourself out there. When you start getting reaction from people and people start interacting with you and you realize you're not as bad as you're not as bad as you thought you were at it, it actually starts fueling the wheel. And any chance you get at work, for example, go to a cafeteria or get outside your office, make an hour a day to walk around and just talk to people. You'll learn more about what's going on in the company and how, you can actually navigate. You'll find champions, sponsors, mentors that way, but force yourself to talk to people that you don't normally talk to. Don't only interact with people that you do in your job. Matter of fact, one of the folks, and can I say this, Jamie? One of the folks in the room, Jamie. The reason I'm here is Jamie. Jamie ended up in my mentoring group when I was at Campbell's, and we ended up with a group of just unlikely people that were kind of glommed together as part of some mentoring exercise. And what ended up happening was the relationships that we established through it, and kind of the inspiration that I think we've all kind of done across the board. It took on a life of its own, and everybody in that group didn't have natural connections in their work. It was, folks that came from different parts of the business, and they found these common places where we were able to have trust conversations and discussions and start working through some of these concepts that enriched everybody's career and everybody's personal brand and career journey. But you'd be surprised when you talk to people, it's not scary. Everybody has the same issues. We all have the confidence-competence issue. Is there anybody here that's like really overconfident?
We have laughs, but no hands. That's good. So we are in good company. There we go. We got two. Of course, Chris.
But just think, you're just like everybody else.
And it's a good point. Like, this little step outside of your comfort zone a little bit. And you judge what that is, whether that's, trying to go out and just talk to one person today or talk to 20. I mean, I love that, goal setting of the LinkedIn. I thought that was really thoughtful. Last question. So what do you think is the biggest gap in creative leadership, and how do you address it? What are we missing? What do we need to develop?
I think, and I hate to keep calling on Stephen's words, but I think Stephen actually hit the nail on the head earlier. As a business leader, and I ran at Campbell's, I had marketing services. It was a service organization that was kind of the commodity. We were trying to move it to to being really a core asset of the business. But I think the issue is really how to articulate to people your value proposition and what you do. And doing it in a way that people understand. It's like, for a lot of my career, I used to get frustrated. Does everybody know what the concept of internal control is in the room?
Why don't you explain that?
No, the point is, no, right? Okay, so I, years ago, would audit you, and I'd say, how do you not have internal controls over this process? Or, how are there no internal controls in place and operating? And you'd look at me like I had 20 heads, because I was speaking my language. I wasn't speaking your language. What you have to really think about deliberately is, what's the language of the business? And not every business has the same language. It's not about buzzwords. It's not about acronyms. It's how do people really, kind of talk about value in the organization? How do they think about KPIs and metrics and the things that matter most and are going to make the most impact? And make sure that you're conveying in any way you can, if it's visually, if it's in words, if it's in those hallway conversations, that you go out and evangelize as much as you can about how the work that you're doing connects in a way that people in the business can actually understand. That's what I think the biggest gap is. The work is amazing. The work is truly, truly amazing, but it's about having that confidence to be able to go out to the business and help them understand how that creates the value for the business. How does it generate sales? How does it acquire new consumers? How does it do things that matter and make impact?
That's a great note to end on. Thank you very much.
Thank you.